What's up, everybody? Hello, hello. Pastor Rob here from Gateway Church Grand Prairie campus. I have the Duns with us tonight. So we're not done yet, but we have a couple more weeks. We have all of November. So I think next week, I got to look at the schedule, but it's going to be power packed tonight. I'm so thrilled. So those that are watching, parents, this is why I created this space and this time on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. I'm a parent of 3 boys, and they all are full of energy. So tons of energy. Literally about 4:50, 5 o'clock in the morning, my boys start waking up. And I worked out, cooked breakfast for everybody. We decorated for Christmas tree and everything before 7 o'clock, basically. And so you can be very productive, but I realized that parenting is not easy. You really have to work at it. And so I created this space for us to ask some questions and just reach out to other people and say, hey, what are you doing that's working? Because I need to glean, I need to learn. Please show me, tell me anything to help me. It can be overwhelming. So those parents are out there, I know you feel overwhelmed, but God is with you. He loves you. He's not going to give you more than you can handle. And I know you don't believe that right now, but it's true. Okay. So welcome, Duns. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves, how long you've been married, your kids, their ages, and then we'll start from there.
All right. Go ahead, sweetheart.
I'm Lorinda Dunn. We have 5 children. We had 4 in a bundle, and then we had one 10 years later. So we have a 30-something-year-old son who's married, and then a 30-something-year-old daughter.
I think it's 34, 32.
Is it after 4? You're like, there's some age. I mean,
30 something.
It's the calculating starts to be, they're just too apart.
They're older. Yeah. They're older than 18. They're
35,
fine.
33.
Yeah.
31 and 28, I believe.
Or, any combination of every 2 years.
Yes. After that.
Close to that. Yeah. So anyway, we have one single daughter, and then the other 3 are married. Mm-hmm. And then we have an 18-year-old. He just turned 18. He's a senior in high school. So
now I know this is live and I don't want to embarrass you all, but what happened? I mean,
well,
wasn't it?
I'll tell you this. We were living in Denmark when Michael was born, and first of all, he was the answer to his oldest brother's prayer. When Andrew was about 8 years old, his 3 sisters were 6, 4, and 2. I was tucking him in bed one night. We were praying. It was our common practice, pray with our children when we tuck them in bed. So Andrew said to me, Daddy, do you think that God would ever give me a brother? Now, I have to tell you transparently, I was thinking, not on your life.
No.
But I said, God answers prayer. And he prayed sincerely that night for a brother. And God did answer his prayer 11 years later.
So Andrew was 17 when Michael was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you do know how that happens. So.
Yeah, I know how it happened. I'm just.
No, we don't have to go into that, right?
This is rated. No, I'm just kidding. So let me go right into the question, because that's what typically I ask every time: is what is one area, and I'm probably going to ask more than that, but let's start off with what's an area that you feel like that you guys have won in parenting.
They're all real people. I mean, they're all good citizens. They're all, they all turned out to be people that I like to hang around with. They all turned out to be incredible human beings. And sometimes you think, especially a mom at home, because I know I had days where I thought, okay, they're gonna have to have inner healing for today, for sure. like I know this day,
Oh boy.
they will be talking about their mother
For the rest of their lives.
to a counselor.
15 years from now, they're going to spend $200 an hour with someone complaining about what happened.
That's exactly right. And I do remember actually having that thought. Today is going to be one of those days. But but they turned out to be incredible human beings. And like that's the goal. Not necessarily that they're a pastor or a baker or what they are is incredible people. So
awesome.
So good.
I think we did that okay.
Well, that's a good job. What I'm asking is how do I get to that?
Yeah.
Like that's real sweet. That's nice.
Okay.
Tell me how to make it happen.
Well,
I
okay,
have
hold on
something-
though.
I have
On
something to say.
that day when I knew, then I just thought, but you know what? Lord, I'm just going to back up and start over. And if John actually always taught giving them mercy and teaching them to take responsibility for themselves begins with us. And so I take responsibility for what made me yell or what made me do whatever and start over. And kids are very forgiving. So it's not like they hold it against you the whole time. You just can move on.
I think I want to say two things about how we get there. One is keep learning. And by the grace of God, we kept learning. Sometimes we think about learning in an educational sense, and that makes sense to us. But in things like parenting, we don't recognize that there is a lot of skill involved in parenting. And one of the skills I read early on, I can't remember the name of the book. I can't remember the author of the book. I can't remember anything about the book except one thing. And it was in one of the first 3 chapters. And this author said, learn to develop heartstrings with each child. That's something that your heart and their heart connects to. So, sometimes you're going along and you just read something that makes sense to you. I read another book on parenting that said that this guy said, my grandfather gave me the most important parenting skill of my life. And every time I saw him, he would get down on his knees. He'd look me eye to eye, so he was on my level. And he would say something like this: what's it like to be you? And so just along the way, there are things that we see in others' ability to parent, or even just to relate to another human, because kids are human beings. They're not just our kids. That's a human being. So when we think about developing a friendship, somebody we've just met, and we think, I kind of like that guy, and I'd like, maybe we could be friends. What do we do? Those kinds of things sometimes almost come natural in certain areas where we're comfortable. But then when we're in this parenting thing and we're like, oh no, I've got to be perfect. I can't screw up, well, you can be a person. And that's the thing. I think we kept learning about them. We kept letting them learn about us. And like Lorinda alluded to, we made mistakes, but we let our kids know when we made mistakes. And we said, look, what we did, that was wrong. And would you please forgive us, and just keep learning, keep being an individual and a human being, keep being real. Those things are sustainable. You don't have to be perfect. We weren't close to being perfect.
I think the big thing to remember,
when you guys said heartstrings, how did you take that, like, practically? Can you give me an example of, like, you got that inspiration, like, okay, now I'm going to have a heartstring. What you're going to have to dig a little bit into that and like practically explain what that means.
Yep. You want to go, or you want me to?
You can go.
So, when you find out like you're talking to a friend on the phone that they like to fish,
Right.
they like to ride a bike,
Mm-hmm.
and you say, could we like do that together?
Mm.
And all of a sudden they recognize you're interested
Mm-hmm.
in something they're interested in. So when, I mean, at one age, I can remember with both my sons, it's guns, for whatever reason, guys like guns. So we had a lot of Nerf gun wars. Both my oldest son and my youngest son, Nerfs were still cool,
Mm-hmm.
11 years later. But for a while with my youngest son, it was football. And my youngest daughter, she loved developing her own language. So we would take drives together. Yeah, we would take drives together where if I actually demonstrated these conversations that we would have, you would think that we were crazy people because it was her language. It was
2 years, 3 years old,
4 or 5 years old. And you're just having someone walking by there go, what language is that? That's Micah's language,
Right.
So we would, it's something that's important to them that
Mm-hmm.
you become interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And it communicates that, hey, this person cares about what I care about.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
it's
awesome.
paying attention.
Mm.
So it's paying attention to them. It's pretty easy um, to project what you think they like on them or what you want them to like
Mm-hmm.
onto them, and they really want to be pleasing. So a lot of times they'll know that you want them to like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll say, yeah, let's do that. I want to do,
Yeah.
So paying attention, um, like when it's not a specific question,
Mm-hmm.
like what do you want to do? But
Mm-hmm.
watching what they want to do,
Mhm.
paying attention um, to what they like, to how they interact, to how they, even how they prefer to, like how they prefer to go to bed, how they prefer to take a bath and be, it, it talks a lot about their personality.
Have you ever sometimes I feel like a drill sergeant because you just said like how they go to the bath. And I make up these rules and my wife Tara is amazing and sweet. She goes, "What does it matter? Why's it got to be your way? Why does it have to be in this order?" And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I just want to lord my control over them. I don't know. Like, do you have those moments where you're like, is this really a big deal? Like, why are we fighting this battle? Is it a battle that I just made up and it's not really that important? Like, how do you decide the difference between what is important and what is not important with battles to fight?
Yeah. With when they're little,
Yeah.
order is important.
Yes.
I mean, it is important for them, but it's also important for your sanity. So you kind of have to, I mean, like you kind of have to work it. And like you said with your wife, when she says, hey, that's not really that important. I mean, I remember, and I already told Lauren I was going to tell this story, but she, when she was little, she would change her clothes like 4 times a day, and put every outfit in the dirty clothes. And so I'm like, girl, I do the laundry, and we're not doing this.
Oh man!
So I had made it into an obedience thing. But then when John and I talked about it, he was like, this is not an obedience thing. This is a preference thing. She, and then she turns out to love clothes, and it was part of her creativity and personality at that time. But for me, it was, a whole nother set of laundry.
Yeah.
So I had to, we had to figure that out and work out what we were going to do about, about it without making it into a fight or a me against you.
Yeah.
So
I think that's
the
so
value of
big.
this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's so big that where it's possible, I mean, I know that there are parents who are single parent families, and that's a heavy load that we never had to carry.
and order is even more important in that.
But being able to have someone to say, maybe you should relax on that, or you know, maybe that's not as important as you think it is.
Mhm.
That's so valuable along the way, and I can look back and realize when I was open to that, and the more open I got to hearing what Lorinda thought about how I was fathering, how I was parenting, the better parent I became.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. So that was perfect. I think just highlighting that value that I see in my wife, that you saw in yours and each
Mhm.
other, and just the single parents that are out there right now. Just, I know that you're given advice probably from your mom on how to parent your kids. It
Mhm.
might not be coming across the right way,
Yeah,
but don't just throw it out either.
right.
It's like there's a perspective that we all need, an outside perspective to say, hey, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
And so yeah, immediately I'm always defensive and I'm like, they need to respect me, or it's like, you don't understand. But it's like, if you let the Holy Spirit convict you, it doesn't take long, and you're like, apologizing. Well, now your kids are older,
Mhm.
so how has your parenting role changed, like, from, because you don't have littles like I do,
Mm.
but to those parents that have teenagers now and are anticipating, or even maybe some parents that are watching this, heck, you don't know that there could be someone watching this is forwarding to their mom, like, mom, watch this and take this advice right now. Listen,
This is
this is
hard.
what our relationship needs to change too. How would you say, like, parents need to parent adults?
Mhm. Yeah.
What does that look like? Like, when they're living in your house? 'Cause I don't know when your kids moved out, like, how old did you have adults in the house?
Yeah.
And then also, like, adults that are outside your house. Like, how's your role change?
Mm. I want to talk just a second about the transition,
Okay, that's
because,
perfect.
as you're raising your children, at each stage, you're giving them more responsibility. You're letting them make more decisions. You're having them be responsible
Mhm.
for more decision making. And the goal is that they grow, that they practice.
Yeah.
You don't just, at 18 say, okay, you're up,
Yeah, there are
and
pre
it's you.
18-year-old rites of passage that can be developed in a home.
But I do want to talk about, um, with sons early in the teenage years,
Mhm.
like the 12, 13, 14, those years, the relationship with the mom has to really change, um, because they go from their mom telling them what to do, when to do it, how to do it, where to do it, telling them what to do, to coming into manhood, where
Mhm.
they they actually need to learn to take responsibility um, for a woman, for a wife.
Mhm.
And so that whole mom telling you what to do makes a lot of strife. So it's almost like there has to be a switch over
Mhm.
from mom being responsible for making all those interactions to dad
Mhm.
making those interactions. And
Yeah.
then dad talks to him like a man
Mhm.
rather than like a child.
Mhm.
So when you met transition, it makes it much easier as they're getting older to be able to parent them as adults.
Yeah, for our oldest son Andrew, when he was about 12, we had a gathering in our home where a lot of men that he looked up to were called over, and they just encouraged him. It wasn't a formal thing. It was just a very wonderful gathering. We had hot dogs, hamburgers, and then these men spoke into his life, man to man. And then we all stood up and said, hey, we're calling you out, dude. You're a man. And so from that time forward, the shift that I began to make with him was not, it was from the standpoint of what are your responsibilities as a man? How do you serve your mother? How do you serve your sisters? How do you serve the Lord? You know, when he was 5 years old, we're on our way to church one day and he said, Daddy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a man of God just like you, and I'm going to shinny up that light pole. because that's what he relayed. For whatever reason, to be able to climb this 40-foot light pole was an expression of power and manhood, you know. So when you're 5, you relate it one way, but that's all given by direction of parenting. This is what it means to be a man. And so, you know, I started asking him those questions. You know, how do you think you should serve your mom when I'm not in the house? Are you asking your mom, how can you help her? Are you asking your sisters, is there anything you can do for her? And of course, the older he got, the broader those responsibilities became. Because, you know, a lot of times you hear about kids moving out from the house, whether it's going into the workforce or going to the university or whatever, they've not had the skill of taking responsibility for themselves. So what can we do before they move out of the house in helping them take responsibility? Not in a demeaning way, like you should be a man or you should be a woman. Why aren't you taking responsibility? But in an opportunistic kind of way. What do you want to take responsibility for? You're a valuable member of the family. So then the transition, once they were stepping into, you know, paying rent for their own, you know, livelihood, every aspect that comes with that, you know, slowly transitioning, they make their own car payment, they make their own insurance payment, they make their, you know, all of those things, but not all at once, because man, that's a heavy load for someone. And so just slowly adding to them the adult responsibilities. And with that comes the responsibility for making those decisions, so we don't make them for them. And, you know, sometimes you see them suffer and it's hard, but you don't step in the way, because guess what? That hardship, that difficulty, that's creating something in them that's extremely valuable.
Yeah, we can't avoid hardship. It's what forms. The fire is what forms things, you know. So that's good. That's really good. No, I think you're almost describing what's lacking in our culture today, and that you'll find in the Jewish culture is a rite of passage. Right. And I think that's so needed today. And we're kind of letting society say what the rite of passage is. Oh, you had sex, or you did something else. You got your first car, you graduated college or high school. Well, they let you down. It doesn't really prepare you for anything. There's not really motivation. It's an event it's a day, an hour that comes and goes. And even fatherhood, I think men thrive on having a weight put on them, a responsibility, and staying underneath that burden and committing and saying, I'm not moving from this spot, you know, and just that fortitude if they stay in it. And I think a lot of times the government, by welfare or whatever, has allowed an escape for men to be men, and we just have overgrown boys, you know. And so now I'm preaching too much, but like,
No,
I found out how much more I matured and I grew when I got married, and then I had the responsibility of children. I feel like I grew leaps and bounds when those things happen. So it's good for man not to be alone. Otherwise, he'll destroy himself. That's why God made woman. So, but yeah, so the question is, okay, you prepared them. They went through the stage. They're ready for it. Now they're ready to enter society. How does your role as a parent change from what it used to be? It sounds like it's constantly changing it as they're getting older.
Yes. And not just constantly changing, intentionally changing.
Okay.
It's so important that parents recognize when their sons and daughters are 12, 13, 14, it varies, could be 11. could be 11, 12, 13, 14. You know, that it's not a one particular age for every kid. But when you recognize that they're wanting to take responsibility, that you find a responsibility that keeps the family working and gives them that opportunity to step out and stand on their own 2 feet and make their own decisions and decide their own values. Because if you're just constantly saying, these are our values, so they're your values, we all know that doesn't work. But when we say, here's our values, here's why we have them, here's how we live them, regardless of what your values are, you have values. And we want you to know that it's important that you pick your values that you're going to live by and that you understand what they are so you can stand on them. I cannot stress it strongly enough, the importance of training our kids and encouraging them in picking values that they want to live by, even if they state them differently than we do as parents.
So there's practically there's new things. Now it's almost impossible for like a single person to get a home or to buy a home by themselves. Whereas years ago when you were 18, you're out on your own. You get an apartment, you do your thing, you figure it out. Well, now it's almost impossible for them to do that without 2 incomes. So kids staying in the home longer, it is not completely based on some of the things that you were talking about.
Okay.
But on the necessity of they actually can't make it until they have saved up enough money or they have gotten established in their career or that kind of thing. So having adult children in your home is not the stigma that it used to be, like, oh, you still live with your mother. I mean, so it's not like that anymore. It's like, oh, you're saving for a home, or oh, you're finishing your degree, or some of those things. So we had our girls stayed in our home until they got married. What, 2?
If they wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we did was like not charge them rent and not charge them basically to live, even though they were adults and had jobs. But the girls saved money for their weddings. So basically, we didn't give them the money, but we gave them the ability to save the money.
That's good.
And the way that it worked out was ended up being much wiser. We were wiser than we thought. But so they were the ones that spent the money. So you're much more careful with money that's yours than money that's mom and dad's. And so there were things that they wanted, and they worked until they got it for the price that they would pay for it. Not, this is what I want, Mom, so put that on your list. So it actually turned out to be a very good thing. We paid for their wedding, but we didn't.
Yeah. And I think too, along the way, we've done this with each one of our children at different times in their life. But whether they've been in the house or on their own, in their own home, we continued to make them aware that as their mom and dad, that we pray for them every day by name, that we're always here to be, anything of benefit we can, whether it's advice or counsel or prayer or whatever. But we slowly handed over the responsibility for making decisions to them on every level. And we started that when they were 11, 12, or 13. And sometimes we would sit down and say, look, up until now, we've made these decisions for you. Like, for instance, you know, my parents had the insight of doing this when I was 15, 16, or 17. I can't remember when they told me. He said, you know, you now decide where you go to church. You now decide when you go to church. You now decide if you go to church. That can be a scary decision for a parent to make. If their parent said, listen here, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday, you know, we're going to be in church. But we started handing those decisions over to them at certain, and again, it's different age, different children. And you have to pay attention to what you feel to be wisdom, what you believe the Lord is speaking to you, what you come into agreement on with your husband and your wife, or whoever the person, if you're a single parent, that you're gaining counsel from for another perspective. All those things. But again, it's the transfer of responsibility, standing on their own 2 feet with the values that they have elected to live their life by.
That's really good.
So adult children living in your home, we had boundaries, but not requirements.
Right.
So, for instance, when John was traveling a lot and we had adult children in the home, I would tell them, if you're not going to be home at a certain time, can you just tell me? Because I don't sleep as well when I know that you're out. And if John's not home and I know that you're out. But, you know, but those things were, you know, like our boundaries were what was best for our home, but not requirements for them, because they were adults. So they make their decisions. But they don't make decisions that are detrimental to our home, basically, which, you know, we didn't actually have anybody who wanted to do that.
And another thing that's kind of like that we do, like there'll be times we're out walking and praying, and we're praying for our kids, and the Holy Spirit will speak something to us that maybe every one of them can relate to. And like not too long ago, I just made a video for my sons and my sons-in-law. And I just sent it to him. I said, hey, this morning I was praying for you guys, and this is what the Lord impressed upon my heart. And I want to share this with you. And then I just press send text message to my sons and my sons-in-law. So those things that we talked about, even when they're children, when they're young, developing heartstrings, are still good for when they're adults too. It's like, wow, you're really involved in my life. You're not trying to control my life, trying to help my life become better. And hopefully that translates into them taking into consideration, okay, this is how my mom and dad parented. This worked when we were young. This worked as we were getting older. This worked as we were adults. And then they can make their own decisions about how they'll go through those phases of being parents as well.
I think it's really good. You're kind of like, instead of telling them what to do, you're submitting it to them and saying, hey, this is what I think, and letting them make this trusting them. And I think kids feel that trust. It's like, kind of like, oh yeah. I think when we control them, we kind of, it's almost like, hey, you're not smart enough to handle this. You know, let me do that. And so it's a very empowering and almost believing, like, I believe in you. You got this. Like sometimes the Lord speaks to us and we're like wanting to get out of a situation, and God's like, my strength's perfect. You're going to make it through. I built some fortitude in you. You got this. I'm going to bring a battle because I know I want you to fight, and you're going to see, you're going to win. So I think that's really good. So we're out of time here, but guys, thank you so much. Thank you. It was just so good. So awesome. So all the parents out there, you're not alone. There's no one perfect. We're all growing. Be intentional. Pursue the Lord. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus, that's the number one. You need that man's help. Come on. And so, and if you feel isolated in any way, get plugged into a local church. And so Gateway is a great church. I'm a little biased, but I love it. But if you need connection or help, single parents that are out there, if you're struggling financially or emotionally or whatever, just text connect to 71010. We are here for you. We want to be here for you. I don't care what state or what country you live in. So if you're seeing this, you're from somewhere else, it doesn't matter. God's love extends, and so does Gateway, extends across borders. And so we love you, and we're here for you, and we're praying for you. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.